What is up everyone, and welcome to another look at F124. This time we've had a deep dive into the new gameplay features, the new handling model, all that kind of stuff regarding the actual car performance and that kind of thing. And I'm very much looking forward to talking about this because I feel like I might be in the minority here, but I'm actually quite excited about this. It seems like they've made a lot of changes which are going to make a fundamental difference to the way that the game plays. So yeah, I guess we'll just get straight into the article here. There was a deep dive video as well, commentated by the absolutely fantastic Alex Jakes. So if you haven't seen that yet, I definitely would recommend going and watching that. I'll probably leave a link to that in the description, like I did with the previous video that we put out the other day. So here we go. Get to grips with EA Sports dynamic handling. I still can't get over EA Sports dynamic handling. It's such a strange, like, it's like, I think it's the registered trademark on here that makes it crazy. Anyway, yeah. F124 delivers Codemaster's largest ever physics update with EA Sports dynamic handling, our most immersive driving experience. Again, it's stuff like this. Like, is it really? I guess we'll find out. We're excited to show you the first gameplay deep dive for F124, the official game of it. Yep. You can learn all about the game-changing upgrades we've made to the driving experience with development support from reigning champion Max Verstappen. You'll feel the difference on track when F124 releases on May 31st. EA Sports Dynamic Handling represents the biggest physics upgrade that we have ever made in a Codemasters F1 title. Your personal driving style now creates new strategic racing opportunities thanks to this immersive new handling model. Okay, first of all, I like, in theory, I like this, right? In theory, I like the idea that the way that you drive is gonna change how like your car performs and your times and that kind of thing. And you know, you've got to like set up your car based on the way that you drive and that kind of thing. But in theory, I know exactly what's going to happen. There's going to be a meta. If you can drive well according to that meta, then you'll be fast. And if you can't drive well according to that meta, you'll be slow. If things don't work out that way, I will actually be very surprised because I can't see a world in which it doesn't just descend into there is a meta. So yeah, here's the video. Like I said, if you haven't seen it, definitely go. I would definitely recommend going and watching it. Right. We worked closely with Max Verstappen on the new EA Sports dynamic handling, which will redefine the feeling of the car to produce more realistic and predictable performance across wheel and pad. It starts with a brand new suspension kinematic system that gives our car a much more realistic feeling of weight distribution and center of gravity. The spring and damper forces have been revised to give a better sense of how the car reacts to varying loads and attitudes through all the different types of corners. So this is a big thing actually that I was really quite impressed by looking at it, and you can see the GIF down here as well. There's another paragraph and stuff, but the suspension is now much more reactive to things like weight transfers and when you go over curbs and just generally the sort of the texture of the track, the smoothness of the track, that kind of thing. That's all going to be a massive sort of impact on the performance of your car through the corners and things like that. You know, you're going to have to set up the car to actually determine how well that your car can perform through the corners and things like that. I think that this is a very welcome change. I didn't really hear anyone asking for this, but this is, you know, this is a really cool new feature that I'm actually quite excited about. So it says this also gives you more flexibility over car setups. You'll need to prioritize the right suspension compromise depending on each track layout and your personal driving style. As a driver, do you want more stability in the high-speed sections or better traction at low speed? So for example, F123, right? I'm always whining about the fact that I never have any traction on certain tracks. There's always certain tracks where I feel like I never get traction out of the low speed corners and the AI just absolutely rinse me on the exit of the corners. So supposedly you now have better control and more realistic tools to tune these variables to your liking. And the gameplay deep dive as well, they had a number of streamers and YouTubers who were there testing it out, which, you know, some people in the comments of the video actually were complaining about that, saying, why did they get YouTubers and not like actual F1 drivers? To which I was thinking, first of all, they literally worked with Max Verstappen to do this, right? But second of all, the YouTubers are the ones that actually play the game. The F1 drivers are the ones driving the car, and I guarantee like 90% of the people in the comment section complaining about that don't appreciate how drastic of a change this actually is, because this is a massive change compared to previous years. So like I said, I'm personally very excited about this, but a lot of people not sharing my same enthusiasm, it seems. But we'll go through what else there is. So there's an improved tyre model. We've made some big improvements to how tyres behave in F124 to add even more to the realism of the cars. Our temperature model in F124 is brand new, with more variation in both the carcass and surface temperatures, depending on factors like the tyre pressures, ambient conditions, track conditions, and your own driving style. In clean air, a smooth operator can make the most of their tyres and extend their stint in the race, whereas an aggressive driver in dirty air, locking their brakes, is much more likely to damage their rubber and wear it out faster. It's so unbelievably over for me in that case, because I am always driving on the limit. The way that I steer the car, it's like I'm literally fighting for my life through those corners. So we may have to try and adjust the driving style a little bit to figure that one out. We've also improved how the tires interact with the track surface in variable conditions. For instance, as the track starts to dry out again after a rain shower, you can seek out the remaining wet parts of the circuit to cool your wets or intermediates. This is a cool change, very small thing, but still, you know, it's something that they do all the time in real Formula 1. You'll see it in Formula 1 if there's, you know, a few laps to go, or if they want to extend the stint on the inters or the wets, they will literally drive into the wet part of the track off the racing line to continue keeping the tyres cool. It's a very sort of minimal thing that I think not many people appreciate, but it is adding just another degree of realism to the game. You'll also notice more realistic transitions between wet and dry, creating more jeopardy around when to make that all-important decision to box for a change. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they mean by more realistic. This is quite vague in my opinion, but I do know on this year's game there would be quite a few instances where the track would still look wet and they'd be like, oh, actually it's dry, time to come in, and vice versa. You know, the track would look like you could probably go a few more laps, and they're like, oh no, actually it's soaked, you're going to be losing 5 seconds a lap, you need to come in and box now. So all of this combined with the new suspension physics makes for a more immersive experience, and we're not done yet. So yeah, this is all cool, right? Like the different changes. Because I feel like the dirty air has never really had that much of an effect. They do have a radio message about it in the game at the moment, where they've like said, oh, you're in the dirty air of the car in front, you're going to lose car performance and that kind of thing. But I've never really felt it that much, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm not saying I don't feel it at all, but certainly the suggestion from what I've seen in real Formula 1 is that the dirty air effect has a massive effect on things. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this quite a lot. And I'll be interested to see how this sort of changes the feeling of the car in the game. It seems from what a lot of the YouTubers in that deep dive video were saying that it has changed things a lot. Obviously, take it with a grain of salt, because that is a video produced by EA and Codemasters to promote the game. So what else have we got? Improved aerodynamic modeling. Dynamic handling in F124 wouldn't be complete without reviewing the all-important aerodynamics of these amazing machines. On top of the revolutionary suspension and tyre updates, we've used computational fluid dynamics to bring significantly more detail to our aero simulation. This gives you a much more accurate feeling of the forces that generate downforce from the wings and the floor. When you're behind another driver, you'll of course feel slipstream effects on the straights, but we now have much more realistic turbulence, or dirty air too, which creates a realistic reduction of grip in the corners when you're closely following a rival. This is cool, actually, because like I said, I've never really experienced that dirty air effect that much. And there definitely is slipstream in the game at the moment, but it's not super powerful. It's not anywhere near as powerful as I've felt like in recent years it has been. The thing that is really powerful in F123, when you're sort of chasing a driver down on the straight, is the ERS. That's the big thing. That's like, if you've got battery, you're going to be significantly faster than someone who doesn't have battery. DRS obviously does make a bit of a difference still, but the big one is the ERS. And yeah, I mean, if the slipstream effect is amplified a little bit, hopefully it's not too powerful. I envision that probably there's a world in which it's going to be too powerful initially, and they're going to have to tone it down in a balance patch a little bit later on. The drag reduction system also benefits from this improved aero modelling. If you run a car setup with a lot of rear wing angle, the increased drag will naturally hurt your top speed on the straights, but you will notice a bigger benefit when the DRS is open compared to a car with a very skinny rear wing setting that can already get closer to terminal velocity without the DRS open. Okay, so basically they're sort of adjusting DRS based on the setup of your car now, if I'm interpreting this correctly, which is interesting. But I guess that means that the DRS effect at a track like Monza, for example, will be much more pronounced than at Monaco, which makes sense, but also is probably going to mean that Monaco, much like in real life, is going to be even harder to overtake at than it already is in the game. The benefits don't stop there. Improved vehicle modelling means that the chassis and floor profiles for each of the 2024 season cars are more accurate than ever before. This will give more experienced players the chance to experiment with the ride height settings to fine-tune their aerodynamic performance on each track by adjusting the rake of the car. Don't forget to study your laps in EA RaceNet and through community telemetry apps to find those all-important tenths of a second. This was something in the deep dive video I was actually quite interested about, is that they've got these sort of these new telemetry features that you can look at, assumedly online, to sort of study in more detail your laps and that kind of thing, which it kind of reminds me of Gran Turismo, because Gran Turismo has super detailed telemetry, and I'm sure there are other games like that as well, but for me, because I'm a PlayStation player, the Gran Turismo is basically the only other game that I really play in that vein. I've done a little bit of Assetto Corsa, but not very much. So yeah, I mean, if they're going in more of a simulation direction, this is quite exciting. I'll give a more sort of nuanced feeling of that at the end, but certainly, you know, changing the I think what they're basically saying is that depending on which car you're in, the way that you're going to have to set up the car is going to be different now, which has never been a thing before, really. You know, there's usually just a meta sort of this setup is fast, this setup is slow sort of situation, which doesn't really seem to be the case in this year's game from what they're suggesting. We'll see how far this goes, because as with everything in this article, keep in mind this is of course published by EA, so you need to take everything with a massive grain of salt, because the actual effect of it could not be that pronounced after all. And then the final thing is the new power unit settings. What's on the inside counts too. We're giving you more control over your car's power unit to give you more opportunities to adapt to changing circumstances and strategies in the race, just like real life. Our throttle maps have been enhanced so that the cars sequentially request more horsepower as your input on the pedal gradually increases on the exit of a corner. This reduces wastage from the electrical part of the hybrid engine and opens the door for more advanced tactical driving. For example, for the first time, you could now manually derate the power delivery and put more energy back into the ERS by lifting and coasting at the end of a straight before the braking zone, saving you vital battery power to deploy in attack or defense later in the lap or later in the race. This is cool, you know, increasing the lifting and coasting effect to save battery effectively is what this is. I think that's quite cool. Also, the sequential request to reduce energy wastage as well with the diff. I think that will, you know, this is going to mean that in order to be sort of a high-level player of this game, you're going to really have to understand things like adjusting differential and you know, really getting the best out of the ERS system. So I think that people who are... I just realized that was a redundant thing. I said ERS system when the S in ERS stands for system. Anyway, I think people who are quite comfortable playing this year's game, it's going to be a massive adaptation period for them to get used to playing this, because this seems like such a fundamental change. The ERS deployment modes have also been adjusted for this year by popular demand, and because it's more realistic, we have brought back the option to swap between ERS modes on the fly in every session of a race weekend, meaning settings like hot lap can once again be used in the race, further enhancing your tactical options in battle. The overtake mode has also been made more aggressive. Well, yeah, there we go. So, look, this should never have been removed the way I see it. Because like they say, it's more realistic, you've got greater tune over it, you know. If you're concerned, because I think the thing about it is that the reason they got rid of it in the first place was because they were sort of concerned about people thinking that, you know, you take a trained monkey, put him in the cockpit, and he'll be able to drive the car. You know, that kind of thing. Where does Formula One have too many buttons and that kind of thing, basically? But yeah, the thing is, they have a feature for that now, which is if you don't understand a setting, you just turn it off. I don't understand why that's not just a thing throughout basically all of it. If you don't get this, you know, they've got it in FIFA, for Christ's sake. Timed finishing. If you don't understand timed finishing, you can just turn it off. And it just means that, you know, your finishing won't ever be spectacular, but it'll usually be quite good. And it can be a similar situation. If you don't understand ERS modes, just turn them off or turn it on to auto, that kind of thing. So all this means that while some settings like overtake will drain the ERS battery faster than in our previous games, you will now have many more tools and tactics available to quickly recharge the battery and get back on the front foot in the race. This is actually cool, and I really hope that I actually can start to understand this a little bit better, because I always get so frustrated at the fact that I feel like I drain my ERS so quickly, especially in league racing. Obviously in the career mode, once you've upgraded the car a little bit, it's not too big of a deal. But yeah, hopefully this will allow me to be a bit more tactical in the league racing going forward. So yeah, you know, overall, I think this is a very exciting change. So quick summarization of all of this stuff: the handling changes and the suspension changes. Excited about that. The tyre model changes, I think, are exciting as well. The aero changes are exciting, and the power unit settings are also exciting. And I think a lot of people are saying, oh yeah, but this is basically just a reskin of F1 23 or something like that. And I'm like, I don't really know what these people want. There are a lot of things that the game is missing, and I'm not saying that it's not, you know. I'm not for 1 second saying that it's not missing a lot of the things that people are asking for, you know, like your classic tracks and like improving the red flags because they're so sort of janky at the moment. You know, lots of different things. Fixing the existing glitches within the game. Obviously, there's no way of knowing whether they're going to do that right up until the game actually comes out, because they're not going to put in a press release or in a promotional article, yes, and all these things, all these ways in which our game was terrible before, we've fixed those now, because that's admitting that the previous game was terrible, which is not EA's business model. And also, to be fair, F1 23, I've never felt was terrible. It certainly had its flaws, but you know, I think all games do in some regard, and it's nice to see that they are trying to make it a more realistic experience. And next up, as they say, career mode. Stay tuned for more about F1 24 in the coming days and weeks, starting with our next deep dive focused on this year's massive evolution in the fan favourite career mode. I believe this is coming on Thursday, so don't be surprised if I do another video about this one, especially considering this is where I sort of ply my trade as far as the F1 games are concerned. On the whole, with this coming up, with the career mode stuff coming up and looking at this, they have once again amplified a really big issue in what I was saying in the previous video that I made on F1 24. If you've not watched that, definitely go back and watch that. That was reacting to the first look press release and that kind of thing. They've amplified this thing where there seems like there's this constant tug of war going on between Codemasters and EA, where I can only assume one faction, probably Codemasters, wants to make the game more sim-focused, you know, much more in line with trying to bring F1 drivers on board with this game to make it, you know, something a bit more realistic. And it's, you know, and I understand why, right? Because it's kind of embarrassing that this is the official game of the Formula One World Championship, and none of the F1 drivers like it because it doesn't feel realistic like you're driving a Formula One car. So I understand why they're constantly making changes to make this more in line with playing or with driving a real Formula One car. But as I said before, the problem is that the further you do that, the more that you're going to alienate the casual fan base. And that's not a problem if your target audience is sim racers. You're just going to have to accept that you're not going to have as much of an audience for it. And that is why I think that they're not fully committed to doing that, because EA obviously is not going to say, oh yeah, we'll just take a hit in sales to make this more appealing to 20 people. You know what I mean? Well, not 20, but you know what I mean. To make this more appealing to to the smaller community of sim racers. We want to make the game more appealing to a larger audience of more casual players, and those primarily are the people who are asking, who are in the comments of the YouTube video, making all of these comments about where's all of these features. This is just a reskin of F123. Because for someone like me, who, I've talked about, I play Gran Turismo as well. I'm a big fan of simulation racing games, and so all of this stuff here looks like a massive change to me. It looks like it's going to be a completely different game based on what they've said here. But for the people a lot of people, particularly casual fans, will read this and they will go, oh, what a load of boring rubbish. I don't care about any of this stuff. I just want to, I'm trying to think of an example. I just want to be able to change the calendar around so I don't have to do all the races in the same order every season. So yeah, that's the problem, is that I just feel like there's this constant tug of war going on there at the moment between EA, who want to bring more casual fans on board because there's a bigger audience for them, and Codemasters, who want to bring on a more realistic feeling and a more simulation experience in line with the early games in the series. I'm not proclaiming for 1 second that F1 2010 necessarily was a realistic feeling game, but if you think about the features in that game compared to in this game, there was definitely a push to make it sort of a lot more simulation focused. For example, there weren't really too many like practice programs, which they've now gamified in recent years games to make it more sort of appealing to actually do the practice sessions, which obviously doesn't really work because I feel like I'm the only person on the planet that actually does those practice sessions and practice programs. But before, it would literally just be like, okay, here you go, practice 1, practice 2, practice 3, go out and do as many laps as you want, basically. And to be fair, I used to do that because I was like, okay, well, this is kind of fun, just kind of getting to grips with the car and improving my lap times and eventually getting to a point where I feel ready to go and qualify and that kind of thing. But obviously there's not as much of a market for that kind of thing, evidently. Or at least there's not a perceived market according to EA. I don't know why I said AI. According to EA, who, yeah, they clearly don't think that that's the way to go. So they're constantly trying to be like, oh yeah, we're going to introduce F1 World and all of these things as well, which obviously is a massive flop because they just don't seem to understand that all we want is a good, interesting career mode. And for the people who play this game competitively, all they want is a realistic competitive multiplayer experience. So yeah, overall I'll be really interested to see how deep the career mode deep dive goes. I really sincerely hope that this is a big change, because more than anything, I just want all these people who are saying that this isn't a big change to shut up, because it really is. And I don't understand how anyone can look at that video and people are like, oh, 5-minute deep dive or whatever, and it's like, yeah, well, obviously they're not going to go into the lines of code that program these particular things, but they have shown off a significant difference in the handling model, the tyre model, the aerodynamic model, the power unit, all that kind of thing. They have shown off that the game is fundamentally different to last year's game. So sometimes I think, if you're a more casual fan that maybe is one of those people saying that kind of stuff, I would maybe just recommend that you sort of temper your expectations a little bit, because I don't really know what more you could want apart from, various sort of changes to the modes and that kind of thing, which as we see, they're doing another deep dive on this. So yeah, for me personally, I'm still optimistic about this game. Do I think that it's going to be the best game in the series? Probably not. The evidence would seem to suggest no, but I still think that it has the potential to be a good game in the series. And all in all, yeah, I think that this is just I was kind of a bit apprehensive when I made my previous video, because I was like, all this press release stuff seems really vague. I'm not sure if anything's actually going to fundamentally change. And now, having watched this, I'm reassured, and it's made me excited for the game coming up, being like, yeah, I think this is going to be a significant change and a welcome one as well. And yeah, I hope that the career mode delivers on what they're suggesting it will in terms of it being a massive overhaul to previous year's games, because Lord knows we need one in career mode as well. But anyway, that is going to be it for this video. So if you enjoyed, please make sure you like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what your feelings on all of this are. Maybe you agree with what I've said. Maybe you think I'm talking absolute waffle. But either way, I value your opinion. I'd love to hear it. So do leave a comment. And hopefully I will see you in the next one.